Okay, so in this video, I'm going to go over some of the sort of subtleties of using pivot tables and calculating with them. Okay, so as you can see, the question here is this data should look familiar, this type of data. We have, this is interval data, hourly interval data. Okay, so we have, from January 1st, 2012 to December 31st, 2012, and then each hour of the day for the whole year. Okay, and then we have, what we're measuring here is kilowatt hours used. So my question I want to answer is how much money did I spend on electricity each month of the year, assuming that electricity costs 10 cents a kilowatt hour? Now there's a couple ways to do it, but I'm going to show you the pivot table way because it sort of helps illustrate how pivot tables work, and more importantly, how the sort of special considerations you need to use when you are using pivot table data to calculate. So I'm going to make a pivot table. Oops, let me do month and select it down to the year. And this is a split screen, by the way, which is why, I'm at row 1, 2 here and row, 3786 here, or 8786 here, excuse me. Okay, so I select all them. I'm going to insert my pivot table. I'm going to insert it into a new sheet. Okay, so now I have my pivot table data, right? And so I'm going to use the month as my row, and then I want my kilowatt hours used. So what you may notice here, so this is, January through December. Now this is count of kilowatt hours used. So this is just the number of measurements in each month. So that is not what I need. I need the sum. So if I go down to change the field settings, go to sum, click OK, now it's showing me the sum of all of the kilowatt hours in each of these months. Now I could, if I wanted to, now this isn't going to help me, but I could, if I want to figure out what is the single highest use in which hour did I have the most use in every given month, I could do the max, right? And then now I have my max of kilowatt hours use. I mean, what I could actually do is do the max, and then I could also do my sum, right? So this is basically my peak usage, and this is my total kilowatt hours used for each month. So remember, my question here is, how much money did I spend on electricity each month, right? Okay, so if my electricity costs 10 cents, right? So we have 10 cents, okay? This is dollars, let's call this per kilowatt hour, okay? So it's pretty straightforward. I just need to, in the month of January, I used, 3,780, 37,882 kilowatt hours, 10 cents a kilowatt hour. So I just need to multiply each of these cells by 10 cents. Okay, so what I can do, if I wanted to add, I could just add another column, do total cost. And, basic Excel stuff. So I should be able to just go equals this times this, okay? But what you may notice if you look in the formula bar, it doesn't just say equal C4, okay, times F1, okay? It's this whole pivot language, right? Okay, so that is my total cost for the month. Now, one thing, you're like, okay, well, I'll do that and I'll just drag it down, do the formula, and we're good. Two problems here. One, which I just frankly forgot to do, is I need my absolute reference, okay? So let's do so now my cost is absolute reference, so let's drag that down and see what happens. So you may notice, should jump out of you right away, this costs the same every month, and yet the number of kilowatt hours used is different each month. So why is it not dragging down and multiplying by each of these? So if you look at the formula, it's all based on this get pivot data formula. So if you click on the get pivot data formula, okay, so this is really helpful. If you're confused how a formula works, it's good to click on the cell and then click on the formula tab, and then you can actually see these different, it actually tells you the different fields. Okay, so the get pivot data formula, or excuse me, function. So the data field. So the sum of kilowatt hours used is my data field. So this is where I'm pulling the data from. So the data field here, notice says sum of kilowatt hours used. That's this column heading. So this is saying where am I pulling my data from? So where am I getting the number from? So this is a formula, right? So I'm multiplying some number times the cost. So the number that I'm multiplying are these numbers. So this data field tells me which column I am pulling my number from. Okay, so these are the actual numbers I'm using. So I'm multiplying this times 0.1, this times 0.1, this times 0.1, and so forth, right? So these are the data points that I'm actually pulling from. Now, if you look at the second part, this is the pivot table. So this says, you see it says A3. So this is A3. So this tells the formula which pivot table to go to, and it just points to the top left corner. So if I had another pivot table down here that started, on A19, this would say A19. So the first number is where it's getting the data from, then which pivot table am I using, then this is my fields, this is sort of my reference. It's kind of like an index function. So it's telling, what this is saying is I need to pull data from this column based on, in this case, the month, right? So the month number 1, right? So this is month and number 1, okay? So right now, this is saying I need to pull a number. So just for this cell, I need to pull a number from this column, okay? That's in this pivot table, and I need the one that corresponds to the month labeled number 1, so January. So month number 1, I need this point. So what it's saying, it's pointing to this number, okay? And then I'm multiplying it times that number. So I do that, it gives me the right answer. So what you may notice, if you go on the next cell down, do the same thing, you notice it's actually the exact same formula. So this is pulling from this column, it's referring to this table, but you notice it's actually referring to month number 1. So the reason this all is giving me the same, see if you go down, the formula doesn't change in the formula bar. It's all month 1. So the month 1 doesn't change. So what I need to do is tell it to change the month that I'm pulling the data from. And so the easiest way to do that, since I'm going to try to drag down, I can just go up here and change this to A4. So now, you notice it gives me the same number here, but if I drag down, it changes my numbers. And let's double check our formula. So now it's pulling from A5. So it's, again, pulling this from this column, but A5. So it corresponds to A5. And then if we go to the next one, it's A6, right? So it's going to pull from March. And if you go up here, A7, A8, A9, A10, and so on, okay? And so now we have all our numbers here, so we just need to do our sum. So you can use auto sum on that. And so there is your answer. There's your total cost of for the year, okay? And this is each month cost, okay? So hopefully that clears up some confusion with using pivot tables to do calculations.